President Trump continued to avoid any major shift on Taiwan policy, even after Xi Jinping's sharp warning during the China talks. Fresh questions emerged inside the Trump administration after Marco Rubio's remarks appeared tougher than the president's public stance on Taiwan. Trump signaled that the long-standing status quo on Taiwan would remain unchanged following his meeting with Xi Jinping.
But it has always been their most important issue. And it's not a takeover. They don't want to see it go independent.
While Trump maintained America's policy of strategic ambiguity, Secretary of State Marco Rubio delivered a firmer warning aimed at Beijing. Some analysts say Xi Jinping secured a major diplomatic victory on Taiwan without taking any military action. US President Donald Trump reaffirmed Washington's long-standing status quo policy on Taiwan following his latest talks with China. The remarks came after Trump held high-level discussions with Chinese President Xi Jinping on May the 14th and 15th. Clarification on Trump's Taiwan position was later provided by US Ambassador to the United Nations Mike Waltz. Waltz said Trump made no commitments regarding Taiwan during his meetings with Xi Jinping. Mike Waltz said, and I quote, "At the end of the day, made no commitments either way, in line with our long-standing policy of strategic ambiguity. There is a whole line of thinking that if you basically indicate or tell China that we won't be there, that it could embolden them as well. There was a large backlog of weapons orders from Taiwan, but that it was up to Trump whether he wanted to cancel them. I think the president was quite clear that there's going to be a status quo going forward," unquote. Mike Waltz made these remarks during an interview with Fox News on May 15 following President Trump's China visit. According to Waltz, the United States continues to follow its long-standing policy of strategic ambiguity on Taiwan. In a separate Fox News interview on May 15, President Trump reiterated that nothing has changed in Washington's Taiwan policy.
But it has always been their most important issue. And it's not a takeover. They just don't want to see this place, we'll call it a place because nobody knows how to define it, but they don't want to see it go independent. They don't want to do it. And I think they probably would do something pretty harsh, and then they would be met harshly, and bad things will happen. No, it's not that. We talked, by the way, last night, we talked the whole night about that issue. I think I know more about Taiwan right now than I know about almost any country.
You think it dominated the talk?
It's always been his most important thing from the day I knew him years ago. I've known him now 11 years, 12 years. It's always been the biggest thing for him, Taiwan. Now, with me, I don't think they'll do anything when I'm here. When I'm not here, I think they might, to be honest with you. I will say that I brought up Jimmy Lai, and I would say the response to that was not positive. He said that he's been, said it's been sort of his worst nightmare. It was,
opposition.
He went through a whole thing. And I said, well, would appreciate if you would release him. He's gotten old and he's probably not feeling too well. It would be nice. And I did not feel optimistic, I have to be honest with you.
Trump also called for tensions between Beijing and Taipei to cool down amid rising regional concerns. The United States continues to maintain informal ties with Taiwan without officially recognizing it as a separate country. China, meanwhile, repeated that Taiwan independence and regional peace are as irreconcilable as fire and water. Beijing has long opposed American military support and diplomatic engagement with Taiwan's government. The renewed remarks come as Taiwan remains a major flashpoint in the broader US-China rivalry. The comments also followed earlier statements on Taiwan policy from the US Secretary of State after the first day of Trump's China talks. Hours after Xi Jinping's unusually open threat over Taiwan, the US Secretary of State delivered a statement on the island, trying to project firmness even as the president stayed cautious. Marco Rubio outlined America's Taiwan policy right after Trump concluded his first day of talks with China, effectively filling the silence left by the president on this sensitive question. He made these remarks in an on-camera interview with NBC News in Beijing on May 14th, ensuring his message reached audiences in the United States, China, and Taiwan at the same time.
President Xi stressed to President Trump that the Taiwan question is the most important issue in China-U.S. relations. Talk to me about that moment when that was discussed.
Well, they certainly feel that way, and they always raise that issue, and we understand they raise that issue. From our perspective, any forced change in the status quo and the situation that's there now would be bad for both countries. One of the things the Chinese emphasize, which we agree, is strategic stability in our relationship, a constructive relationship, but also one that establishes strategic stability so that we don't have misunderstandings that could lead to broader conflict. And so we always reiterate the point. We hear them when they say this. We always respond by saying anything that would compel or force a change in what we have now would be problematic. And we would certainly, our policies on that have not changed. It's been pretty consistent across multiple presidential administrations and remains consistent now. U.S. policy on the issue of Taiwan is unchanged as of today and as of the meeting that we had here today. It was raised. They always raise it on their side. We always make clear our position and we move on to the other topics. We know where they stand and I think they know where we stand.
Do you think China wants to invade Taiwan?
Well, I think China's preference is probably to have Taiwan willingly, voluntarily join them. In a perfect world, what they would want is some vote or a referendum in Taiwan that agrees to fold in. I think that's what they would prefer. Ultimately, it's featured prominently in President Xi's mandate in the time he's been in office. He's made clear that what they call reunification, that's what they call it, is something that has to happen at some point. We think it would be a terrible mistake to force that through force or anything of that nature. There would be repercussions for that globally, not just from the United States. The pace of growth in the Chinese military over the last 10 years has no precedent, none. I mean, just what they've done with their Navy alone over the last, they've put billions and billions and billions of dollars in their system. So it's, you know, you look at it, I mean, it's hard to ignore how fast and how big. So I don't think it's just limited to Taiwan. I think they have ambitions to ultimately be able to project power globally the way the U.S. does now.
Rubio added that the issue of future U.S. arms sales to Taiwan did not feature prominently in the talks, suggesting the topic was handled cautiously, if at all, during the Beijing meetings.
Did President Xi request to President Trump not to sell weapons to Taiwan?
Well, that topic has been discussed in the past. It did not feature prominently in today's discussion. We know what their position on that is already. Remember, Congress plays a role in that process as well.
Ahead of the trip, Trump himself had said he would discuss U.S. arms sales to Taiwan with Xi Jinping, raising expectations that this contentious issue would be on the summit agenda. That pledge ran up against long-standing U.S. policy, which generally prohibits detailed Washington-Beijing negotiations on arms sales to Taiwan in order to preserve American flexibility. At the same time, Washington has been pressuring Taipei to significantly increase its own defense budget, insisting that Taiwan must spend more on its self-defense against Chinese pressure. The Taiwan issue emerged as a major point in talks that were otherwise dominated by the conflict involving Iran and the wider Middle East crisis. During their closed-door discussions, Xi warned Trump that U.S. support for Taiwan, if pushed too far, could lead to clashes and conflicts between Washington and Beijing. He reportedly went further, saying that if the Taiwan issue was mishandled, the United States and China could come into conflict, leaving little doubt about where China's red lines lie. Subsequently, the official White House readout on the summit appeared to skip any mention of Taiwan, adding to the sense that the topic was too sensitive to spell out publicly. Trump also seemed to dodge a question on Taiwan during his choreographed visit to the Temple of Heaven with Xi, reinforcing the impression that he did not want to publicly provoke Beijing on camera.
Did you talk about Taiwan?
Great place, great, incredible. China's beautiful.
At the same time, Taiwan declared that it would maintain close ties with the United States following Xi's threat, signaling that Taipei has no intention of backing away from its key security partner.